Rain shimmered in a thin sheet under the streetlight when I stopped in front of that building. This was the part of my city where night didn't just mean darkness. Night meant decisions. Every time I tried to steady my breathing, a fresh jolt of heat tore through my ribs. On my right side, just beneath my lower ribs, my clothes had turned heavy and sticky.
Blood.
Enough that I could feel its warmth on my fingers, like my own body was warning me, "You don't have time." I'd only ever seen this place from a distance. The kind of building with 2 security men out front, and a silence so expensive it felt louder than traffic. But tonight I hadn't come to look. Tonight I had come to survive. My steps wavered. Each stair felt like it was pulling the life out of my bones. One thought ran through my head on repeat. If I fell here, I'd go back to where I'd run from. And going back there was worse than dying. I searched for a doorbell. My hands barely obeyed me. There was a small keypad beside the door, but I didn't know the code. I only knew who lived behind it, a man whose name people said carefully, like even speaking it could summon trouble. A man most people considered the biggest risk of their lives. I knocked with my knuckles against the metal. The sound echoed inside me, like a hollow drum. I knocked again, harder. A thin line of blood smeared across the door. "Please," I managed, my voice scraping out of my throat. "Please open." Something moved on the other side. Footsteps. Slow and controlled, the way some people never hurry, like time works for them, not the other way around. A lock clicked. The frame shifted. Then the door opened. The first thing I saw was his silhouette.
Tall.
Wide shoulders. A black shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. A phone in his hand, like he'd stepped away from a call. Even in the dim light, the whites of his eyes looked sharp, cold, measured, like a judge who could read your soul before he ever spoke a verdict. I tried to inhale, but pain split me in half. And then my legs gave up. I fell toward him. I only remember this much. Before my head could hit wall or floor, his arms came around me.
Strong.
Steady. Not like I was a person, like I was a responsibility. The heat of his hands held my shaking body together for a second, stopping the cold from swallowing me whole. His gaze dropped to my side where blood was still spreading. His face didn't soften, not even for a heartbeat. But something changed in his eyes, a spark that comes right before danger. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice low, but full of command. I tried to answer. My lips moved, but the air I had left came out as a broken sentence. I whispered. They shot me because My words snapped apart. The world started to blur, like someone had laid a sheet of water over my eyes. But I saw his face, those same cold eyes, that unbreakable stillness, and I understood something instantly. The door I'd reached wasn't just a door. It was a boundary line. On the other side of it, people spilled blood. Inside it, people collected blood. He didn't waste a second. He kicked the door shut behind him and lifted me into his arms. I was stunned by how easily he carried me, like my weight was nothing, like he could lift the entire city the same way if he decided to. Inside, the foyer light was soft and warm, but in that warmth his face looked even more like stone. Drops of my blood hit the marble floor. He switched his phone to speaker and spoke the moment the call connected.
"Now. To me."
"Not the front entrance. Service elevator. And don't let anyone onto this floor." Someone replied on the other end, but I couldn't catch the words. I didn't need to. His tone told me everything. This wasn't a request. It was an order. He laid me on a couch, but not the way people set down the injured, more like the way someone places something valuable somewhere safe. His hand stayed on my shoulder for a beat, as if he was checking my balance or claiming it. "Name," he said. Haya." My lips trembled. "Haya Qureshi." His eyes held my face, then flicked to my clothes, my hand, the blood streak that had reached his black shirt. "Haya Qureshi," he repeated, like he was matching my name to something in his head. I forced my gaze up. "I don't know you personally, but someone told me that if I ever wanted to stay alive, I should come to you." For the first time, his mouth moved slightly. Not a smile, just a cold hint of recognition. "Who told you?" I closed my eyes and a flash hit me, an underground parking garage, a car's headlights, a man's furious breath, and that voice. If they come for you, don't run to the police. The police already sold you. Run to the wolf. Wolf. That's what people called him. I opened my eyes. I can't give you the name. Fear punched through me again. They're looking for me. And if they find out I came here, they already know. He cut in, flat and sure, as if my fear wasn't something to soothe but something to treat like weather. Otherwise you wouldn't be on my doorstep like this. I tried to breathe. Someone shot me. I didn't see their face. I only saw one thing. He tilted his head slightly. What? My hand rose, shaking. From beneath my collar, I pulled out a small object, my silver pendant, now soaked in blood. Inside it, a tiny black emblem sat like a mark burned into metal. A chess piece. A rook. This, I whispered. I saw the same tattoo on their hand. And then I fell. His face froze, not in shock, but like something old inside him had just woken up. An old wound. An old fury. He took the pendant. His thumb rubbed the emblem once, slowly. Then he lifted his phone again. Marco, he said.
Yeah.
The Rook mark is confirmed. He listened to the voice on the other end, then said a sentence that made my head spin even through the haze. Tonight's debt starts now. His eyes returned to mine. And whoever threw you at my door like a message will pay the price tonight. I tried to speak, but my body refused. A dull buzzing filled my ears. The soft ceiling light began to dissolve, pulling me under like deep water. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was his face, cold, steady, but with a decision lodged inside it like a blade. And I understood. I hadn't come here only to survive. I had collapsed at the doorway of a war. And war was going to begin tonight. When I woke, the first thing I felt was the weight of my own body, as if I had been poured into it again too quickly. The room smelled clean, almost clinical, but not like a hospital. The air carried faint hints of cedar and something sharper, antiseptic, maybe. My side burned in a steady, stubborn line, and when I tried to shift, the pain reminded me exactly where the bullet had kissed me and kept going. I blinked at the ceiling. It wasn't plain drywall. It was recessed lighting, soft and warm, arranged with the kind of precision that said someone here didn't leave comfort to chance. I turned my head and saw curtains drawn tight against the rain. Beyond them, I could still hear the city, muted sirens, distant engines, the occasional hiss of tires on wet streets. For a second, I forgot how I'd gotten here. Then memory snapped back like a wire pulled taut. The keypad I couldn't use, the door, the cold eyes, the strength that caught me before the floor did. The pendant.
The Rook.
My hand went to my chest, searching. The chain wasn't there. Panic rose in a rush that made my wound flare. I forced myself to breathe slowly, in and out, until the room stopped tilting. The bed was too big, too expensive, the sheets too smooth. There was a small table beside me with a glass of water and a folded cloth. A faint beep came from somewhere to my left, and 4-pump hidden behind the edge of a chair, like even medical equipment had been trained to stay discreet. Footsteps approached. I stiffened. My throat tightened, and for a moment I hated my own weakness. How quickly fear could make my heart slam against my ribs as if it wanted to run away without the rest of me. The door opened and a woman stepped in. She looked like she belonged in courtrooms and boardrooms, not in the private wing of a man people called the Wolf. Her hair was pinned back, her posture straight, her face calm in a way that didn't read as kindness, but as competence. She carried a small tablet in one hand and a medical kit in the other. Her eyes flicked to the monitor, then to me. Good, she said, like my waking was just one item crossing off a list. You're stable.
My voice came out raw.
Who are you? Valentina. She set the kit down and checked the bandage along my side with quick, careful movements. You lost a lot of blood, but the bullet didn't stay inside. You're lucky. Lucky. The word felt wrong in my mouth, wrong in that room, wrong in the world I'd stumbled into. Where is, I started, and stopped because I wasn't sure what to call him. The man. The wolf. The cold eyes behind the door. Where is he? Valentina didn't look up. Working. I swallowed. My necklace. The pendant. It's not gone, she said. He took it. Something about the certainty in her tone made me colder than the rain outside.
Not gone.
Not stolen.
Taken.
Like my last clue belonged to him now. I tried to sit up. The room spun slightly, and Valentina's hand pressed my shoulder back down. Firm, not gentle. Don't, she said. Not yet. I clenched my jaw. Why am I here? Valentina finally met my eyes. Because you were left at his door, like a message. I wasn't left, I said, and the words came sharper than I expected. I ran. I chose that door. Her expression didn't change, but something in her gaze sharpened, like she was measuring me. Then you chose the most dangerous door in the city. I didn't deny it, because the truth was I had, and I still wasn't sure if it would save me or bury me. Valentina adjusted the foreline and checked my pulse with 2 fingers. She worked like she'd done this 1,000 times, not because she was a nurse, but because she was the kind of person who learned whatever kept her people alive. Listen carefully, Haya, she said. She pronounced my name like she'd already heard it multiple times tonight. In this place, you don't wander. You don't touch what isn't yours. And you don't assume anyone outside those walls is safe. My mouth went dry. My phone. It's gone, she said. For now. For now, I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady even as anger curled under my skin. I have a brother. Valentina paused for a fraction of a second. It was small, but I noticed it. The kind of pause that meant she'd already thought about the thing I'd just said. Name, she asked. Safe, I said. Safe Qureshi. He doesn't know any of this. Valentina tapped something on her tablet. We'll check. The way she said it, flat, controlled, didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like procedure. Like I was now a file on a screen. A sound drifted in from outside the room. Voices, low and urgent. A door closing. The faint hum of an elevator. The house felt alive in a way I hadn't noticed earlier, like a beehive that had been struck and was now vibrating with purpose. I lifted my head slightly. What's happening? Valentina's eyes flicked toward the hallway. Security. Security, because of me? Valentina didn't answer right away. Then she said, Security, because of what you brought. My stomach tightened. I didn't bring anything. She looked at me as if I'd missed the point on purpose. That pendant. That symbol. You didn't walk in here alone, even if you came alone. Before I could respond, the room changed, like the air itself shifted under an invisible weight. He entered without needing permission. The man from the door. Up close, he was even more still. Not stiff, still like a predator choosing not to move because he didn't have to. His hair was dark, slightly damp, as if he'd been in the rain without caring. His sleeves were still rolled up, and there was a faint smear of dried blood on his forearm. Mine, like evidence of the moment he'd caught me. He didn't look at Valentina first.
He looked at me. Cold eyes.
Not cruel. Controlled. You're awake, he said. I tried to push myself up again. This time Valentina didn't stop me, as if she decided I needed to sit in my own discomfort. I managed to prop myself against the pillows, ignoring the pain. My brother, I said immediately. I need to know if he's safe. The wolf held my gaze like my words were a lock he intended to pick. We're checking. The fact that he used the same phrasing as Valentina made my skin prickle. They weren't improvising. They were moving as one machine. He stepped closer. In his hand was my pendant, dangling by its chain. The Rook emblem caught the light like a tiny black eye. Tell me exactly what you saw, he said. Everything. I swallowed, and for a second my throat closed with fear. Not of him, but of how real the past hour became the moment I tried to explain it. The moment I spoke it out loud, it stopped being an accident and became a target. I didn't see his face, I said. It was too fast. Too dark. But his hand, my voice shook once, and I hated myself for it. He wore gloves, but the cuff slipped. The tattoo was here. I lifted my own wrist weakly, indicating the spot. Like a rook, sharp edges. Black ink. The wolf's jaw flexed once. And he pressed. There was a ring, I said, forcing my memory to focus. A heavy ring, silver, with a flat top. It clicked when he gripped the gun, like metal hitting metal. The wolf didn't blink. But I felt him listening in a way that wasn't human, like every detail mattered more than my pain. I heard someone else, I added. A voice behind him on the phone. They said,
Don't miss.
She has the ledger. Valentina's fingers paused over her tablet. The wolf's eyes narrowed a fraction. Ledger. I nodded, and the room felt tighter suddenly, as if I'd just placed a bomb on the bed between us. I work in accounts, I said, the words coming faster now because there was no point in hiding it anymore. At a logistics company. Shipping invoices. Numbers nobody notices. But I noticed. I found patterns. Transfers that didn't match deliveries. Containers that didn't exist, but were paid for anyway. My mouth tasted like iron. I copied it. I didn't even know who I was stealing from. I knew it was wrong. And then you ran, Valentina said quietly. I tried to go to the police. I admit it, shame burning behind my eyes. But someone warned me not to. Said the police were already bought. The wolf's gaze hardened, like my confession didn't surprise him at all. That was when the first sound came, deep, distant, muffled through glass and walls. Not a gunshot. Not a scream. Something heavier. Like a door being forced open somewhere far below, followed by the rapid thud of running feet. Valentina looked at her tablet. The wolf didn't move, but his attention shifted like a blade turning. What is it? I asked, my voice thin. Valentina's eyes stayed on the screen. Marco reports contact. My heart kicked. Contact with who? The wolf's voice dropped, colder than before. With the people who thought leaving you at my door was a smart idea. He turned slightly, as if he could see through walls, as if he could watch the city, like it was a map only he understood. Then he looked back at me, directly, unflinching. You didn't just ask for shelter tonight, Haya, he said. You pulled a thread. I stared at him, trying to ignore how my hands trembled. And when you pull the wrong thread, he continued, the whole thing comes down. Another sound echoed, closer this time. The ping of an elevator arriving. Footsteps that didn't rush, but carried urgency anyway. Valentina's tablet chimed softly again. Her face remained composed, but her eyes sharpened as she read whatever message had just come in. She says, the wolf asked. Valentina lifted her gaze to him. They found the courier. My stomach sank. Courier? Valentina looked at me, and for the first time there was something almost like pity in her expression. Brief, quickly buried under control. The man who delivered the message, she said. Not you. The wolf's eyes stayed on me as he spoke, like he wanted me to understand exactly what this meant. Someone paid tonight, he said. My breath hitched. And we're not finished collecting. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like the inside of a locked fist. After he left the room, the silence didn't return the way it should have. Instead, it was filled with movement, soft steps in hallways, murmured reports, the faint metallic click of weapons being checked somewhere out of sight. Even the air seemed disciplined, as if every molecule knew it wasn't allowed to relax. Valentina stayed with me long enough to recheck my bandage and make sure the dizziness didn't swallow me again. She moved with the same calm precision, but now I noticed the tension she kept tucked behind her composure, like a blade hidden in a sleeve. What happens to me now? I asked, staring at the rain-streaked curtains. You rest, she said. And you tell the truth. I already did. Valentina's eyes slid to mine. Not all of it. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because the truth was complicated. Because the truth had sharp edges. Because the truth, if spoken in the wrong place, got people killed. She didn't push. She simply adjusted the blanket over my legs and stepped toward the door. If you feel pain beyond the wound, she said, tell me. If you feel fear beyond what's normal, tell me too. Fear makes people sloppy. Then she left, and the room became mine again. I tried to breathe through the ache in my side, tried to slow down my racing thoughts. But my mind refused to settle. It kept replaying the phrase I'd heard. She is the ledger. It kept rewinding to the way the wolf had held my pendant like it wasn't jewelry, but a verdict. It kept circling the same terrifying idea. I hadn't just run into danger. I'd brought danger to him. And now that danger was moving. A soft knock came, and before I could answer, a man stepped inside. He didn't look like a doctor or a lawyer. He looked like the kind of person who made bad choices sound reasonable. Mid-30s. Clean cut. Black jacket. No visible weapon, but his posture carried one anyway. "Marco," he said like that should explain everything. I didn't respond. My throat was too tight. He glanced toward the monitor, then toward the door, like he was checking angles and exits even inside a room that was already controlled. "You're awake," he said. "Good." His tone wasn't kind. It wasn't cruel either. It was functional. "What did you mean about the courier?" I asked. Marco's mouth barely moved. "The man who guided you here. He's the one they used to shove you toward the store. We found him." My stomach twisted. "Alive?" Marco hesitated. "Just long enough." "Breathing," he said. "For now." My fingers dug into the sheet. "What did he say?" Marco studied me, like he was deciding how much truth I could survive in one sitting. "He said you weren't the target," he finally answered. "Not originally." The room felt colder. "Then who was?" Marco's gaze flicked toward the hallway. "Boss." I swallowed hard. It shouldn't have surprised me. Nothing about that man felt like someone who could exist without enemies. But hearing it said out loud made everything heavier. If the bullet had been meant for him, then my survival hadn't been luck. It had been strategy. So I was bait. I whispered. Marco didn't correct me. The word lodged in my chest like another wound. "What happens to my brother?" I asked, forcing the question through my fear. "I need to talk to him." Marco's expression sharpened slightly. No contact. I stared at him. "You don't understand. He doesn't know anything. If they can't get to me, they'll go to him." Marco's eyes held mine in a way that said, "I understand exactly that." He reached into his jacket and pulled out my phone. My pulse jumped. "You." He lifted one finger, silencing me without even touching me. Then he turned the screen toward himself and scrolled through something. "We pulled your call history," he said. "Your messages. Everything." The invasion made my skin crawl, but I had no strength to fight it. Marco tapped once, then showed me the screen. A missed call. From safe. Timestamp, 12 minutes ago. My breath vanished. He called me. Marco's tone stayed flat. Twice. My hands trembled. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we needed to confirm whether the call was really him." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. "What do you mean, confirm?" Marco exhaled through his nose, the closest thing to sympathy he seemed capable of. "People use phones," he said, "to fish for panic." A cold wave rolled through me. Safe's number could be in anyone's hand. Anyone's voice could be twisted into anything if fear did the work. Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced down, read whatever message appeared, and the muscles in his jaw tightened. Then he looked at me again. "They've already moved," he said. My mouth went dry. "Who?" Marco didn't answer directly. He didn't have to. In my head, the image formed on its own. Shadowy figures stepping into Safe's life the way they'd stepped into mine. Quiet. Certain. Violent. I tried to get out of bed. Pain tore through me instantly, and the world tilted. My legs refused to cooperate, but terror gave me strength for a second, enough to push my body forward. Marco crossed the room in 2 steps and pressed me back down. His hand was firm, not gentle, but he wasn't rough either. Just immovable. "You can't walk out," he said. "I have to," I rasped. "That's my brother." Marco's face didn't change. "Then you'll make it worse." I stared at him, panting, my vision flickering at the edges. "I can't just lie here." "No," Marco agreed. "You can't." He released me slowly, as if he was making a point. "You're not trapped by force. You're trapped by reality. The door opened again, and the wolf stepped in. He looked exactly the same as before, controlled, cold, untouched by haste. But his eyes were different.
Sharper.
More awake. Like tonight had peeled away whatever patience he kept for daylight. He glanced once at the bed, at me, at Marco. Then he held out something in his hand. A slim black USB drive. My stomach flipped. Where did you get that? From your apartment, he said. My throat tightened. You went there? I sent people, he corrected, like accuracy mattered more than the danger. You left it behind. In a kitchen drawer. Wrapped in foil. My chest constricted. I remembered my trembling hands hiding it there, my mind screaming that I didn't have time to do anything smarter. You found it, I whispered. His gaze didn't soften. You should have brought it. I didn't think I'd make it that far, I said, and the words tasted like shame. He turned the USB drive between his fingers. This is why they shot you. I swallowed, forcing myself to speak through the panic. It's proof.
Names.
Transfers. Container numbers. But I didn't know who it belonged to when I copied it. I didn't know it would. Lead you here, he finished. I nodded once. Silence stretched. Then the wolf's eyes slid to my phone on the bedside table. Your brother called, he said, not as a question. Marco's jaw tightened. My voice cracked.
Please.
Let me talk to him. Just 1 minute. I need to hear his voice. The wolf looked at me like he was weighing a life on a scale. Then he said, no. The refusal hit me harder than the bullet had. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, hot and humiliating. I'm not asking to escape, I said, gripping the sheets. I'm asking because if he's in danger and I do nothing, you'll die with guilt, he said, flat and precise. And your guilt won't save him. I flinched as if he'd slapped me, but he didn't move. He didn't need to. His words were enough. He stepped closer to the bed. The room seemed to shrink around him. We're finding him, he said, voice low. Right now. But you making contact gives them a signal. Fear makes patterns. Patterns get tracked. I hated that he was right. I hated that the logic made sense even as my heart screamed against it. And the courier? I asked, my voice small. You said someone paid tonight. What does that mean? The wolf's eyes held mine. Then he turned his head slightly toward the doorway. Bring him. A minute later, 2 men walked in, guiding a third between them. The courier looked like he'd been dragged through a storm. His face was swollen, his lips split, his shirt damp. But he was standing, and his eyes were wide with the kind of terror that didn't come from pain alone. It came from understanding who he was standing in front of. He saw me on the bed, and something like guilt flickered across his expression. I didn't want this, he blurted. I swear. She ran to me. I tried to help. The wolf didn't react. He simply held up the pendant again, my pendant, the Rook emblem glinting like a black promise. Who gave you the symbol? He asked. The courier's eyes darted. I don't know. Marco shifted, and the courier flinched so hard his shoulders rose to his ears. The wolf's voice didn't rise. That was what made it worse. Try again. The courier swallowed, sweat beading on his forehead.
A man. Tall.
Scar on his chin. He said if the girl comes to me, I take her to your door. That I don't ask questions. That I just deliver. My nails dug into my palm. I could almost see that scar in my mind now, like my memory was catching up. And if you didn't? The wolf asked. The courier's face crumpled. He showed me photos. Of my kid. Of my wife. He said I'd be buried. The wolf stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to Marco. Find the scar, he said. Marco nodded and moved out immediately, like his body had been built for orders. I stared at the courier. My voice came out rough. Did he say why? Why me? The courier looked at me with something like apology. Because you had the numbers, he whispered. Because you were going to hand them to someone else. My blood turned to ice. Who? The courier's eyes flicked to the wolf, then away, as if the name itself was dangerous. I heard it once, he said. They called him Crow. The air in the room shifted again. Valentina had said it like a warning earlier. The wolf had reacted to it like a familiar disease. My heart hammered. The police detective? The wolf's gaze locked on me. You recognize the name. I nodded slowly. He came to my office 2 weeks ago. Said he was investigating fraud. He asked questions that didn't match the case. My voice trembled. I thought he was trying to help. The wolf's expression stayed cold, but something in his eyes hardened into certainty. Crow isn't investigating, he said. He's collecting. Another message pinged somewhere outside. The wolf turned his head slightly, listening to a voice in the hallway. Then he looked back at me. Your brother, he said. My lungs clenched. What about him? The wolf's voice dropped lower, colder. They found his address. My entire body went rigid. And before I could even beg, before I could even breathe, he added the sentence that made my world tilt into something sharp and terrifying. And they're already there. The moment he said they're already there, the room stopped being a room. It became a map in my head. Safe small apartment, second floor, the narrow stairwell that always smelled like frying oil from the neighbor's kitchen, the weak lock that stuck in winter. I saw it all like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe around the pain in my side. I tried to move again. Instinct overrode injury. My body screamed no, but my mind screamed louder. The wolf didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The whole house reacted to him like a body reacting to a brain. Marco was already moving. I heard him in the hall, quick steps, rapid instructions into a phone. Valentina appeared in the doorway like she'd been summoned by the shift in air, her eyes flicking from my face to my bandage, already calculating what I could survive. I'm going, I said, pushing myself up on my elbows. Valentina's hand came to my shoulder, firm. You're not. He's my brother. I hissed, and the tears I refused to shed made my eyes burn. If something happens, if you collapse in a stairwell, Valentina cut in, you help no one. The wolf stepped closer. He didn't touch me, but his presence was a restraint all by itself. Tell me the layout, he said. The request hit me like a slap of cold water. He wasn't asking for permission. He wasn't asking how I felt. He was treating Safe's life like an operation, because feelings don't stop bullets, but details might. I forced myself to focus. Second floor, I said, breath shaky. There's one main staircase, and a service stair at the back by the trash bins. Hallway is narrow. Apartment 2B. There's a window in the living room that faces the alley. The wolf's eyes narrowed. Neighbors? An old couple across the hall? I said. They're always awake. They watch everything. Good, he said. Like that, too, was a weapon. Valentina reached into her pocket and pulled out a small syringe. Her voice was calm, but there was no softness in it. Pain is going to make you stupid. I'm not letting you be stupid. I flinched. What is that? A stabilizer, she said. Not enough to knock you out. Enough to keep you from blacking out when adrenaline wears off. Before I could argue, she cleaned my arm and pressed the needle in. A quick sting. Then warmth spread through my veins, dulling the sharpest edge of my pain without taking away the urgency. The wolf turned to Marco. 2 teams. 1 to Safe. 1 to Crow. Marco's jaw tightened like he'd been waiting for that sentence. He nodded and disappeared. Crow. The name felt like an omen in my mouth. A policeman who wasn't policing. A man who wore law like a costume. I grabbed the blanket with both hands, trying to steady my trembling. He's going to kill him because of me. The wolf's gaze came back to me, cold and direct. They didn't go to your brother because of you. I stared at him. Then why? Because you're the easiest key, he said. Family is always the easiest key. Valentina adjusted my 4-line and slipped something into my hand, my phone, but powered off. Keep it, she said. Do not turn it on. My throat tightened. Why give it to me then? So you stop thinking you've lost everything, she replied. Fear makes people reach. Reaching gets you tracked. The wolf walked out of the room. I heard the house shift around him, doors opening, elevators moving, voices lowering into tight focus. He didn't look back, but I followed anyway, ignoring Valentina's protest. I wasn't strong enough to walk on my own, not like this. But I could stand. I could lean against the walls. I could make myself present, even if it was stupid. Even if it was dangerous. We moved through halls that looked like luxury, and War had agreed to share the same space. Art on the walls, clean lines, but cameras tucked into corners, locks on doors that looked too heavy for a normal life. In the living area, a wall of glass showed the city like a glittering threat. The rain had turned the streets into dark veins of light. Somewhere out there was my brother, and somewhere out there were people who had decided my life was a ledger entry to erase. In front of the glass, the wolf stood with a tablet in his hand. A live feed played across it, grainy camera footage of a street corner, a building entrance, a figure moving too quickly to identify. His attention was absolute. It wasn't anger I saw in him now. It was something colder. Control. Valentina came up beside me, staying close enough to catch me if my knees betrayed me. "You should sit," she murmured. "I'm standing," I whispered back. "If he's standing, I'm standing." Valentina's eyes flicked to mine, and for a moment I saw something human there, recognition maybe. Then she looked away and became still again. A phone buzzed. The wolf answered on the first ring. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask who it was. He just listened. I couldn't hear the voice on the other side, but I saw the wolf's eyes shift, one small movement that told me the news wasn't good. Valentina leaned in slightly. "Marco." The wolf's voice stayed flat. "Yes." My stomach dropped. I reached for the edge of the counter to keep myself upright. The wolf listened for another 3 seconds, then ended the call. "He's not answering?" I asked, the words scraping out of my throat. The wolf looked at me. He answered. I almost collapsed with relief until he added, "But not with words." My blood turned to ice. "What does that mean?" Valentina's hand gripped my arm, hard enough to anchor me. The wolf turned the tablet toward us. On the screen was Safe's building. The camera angle was from across the street, like someone had planted eyes there ahead of time. The front entrance was visible, the dim hallway behind the glass door. 2 men stood outside pretending to smoke, their posture too watchful, too deliberate. Not neighbors. Not friends. Then another figure appeared. My brother. Safe stepped out, his shoulders tense, his phone in his hand like he'd been called outside by something urgent. He looked around, confused, scanning the street the way someone scans for a familiar face. Then one of the smokers moved. Too fast. A hand landed on Safe's shoulder. Friendly at first. Like an old friend greeting him. Safe flinched. The second man closed in behind him. In a single breath, Safe's confusion snapped into fear. I saw it in his body. How his spine stiffened, how his free hand rose instinctively like he wanted to push away, like he wanted to run. But he didn't get the chance. They guided him. Guided, not dragged, back toward the entrance, their bodies blocking the camera's view. To anyone watching casually, it would look like 3 men walking inside together. My lungs refused to work. I made a sound I didn't recognize. Half gasp, half sob, pure helplessness. They took him. I whispered. The wolf's eyes stayed on the screen. They moved him. Move him where? I asked, voice breaking. Where do they take? Valentina cut in, her voice sharper now. They're going to use him to pull you. My hands shook so badly I couldn't feel my fingers. I can't let them. They won't keep him long, the wolf said. My head snapped toward him. How can you know that? He looked at me then. Cold eyes, but not empty. Because they don't want your brother, he said. They want you to trade. My mouth went dry. Trade for what? The wolf lifted the USB drive between 2 fingers. For this, he said. And for the name of whoever else's copies. Valentina's gaze sharpened. You told someone? I shook my head fiercely. No. I swear. I didn't. The wolf didn't accuse me. He didn't comfort me either. He simply turned to the side and spoke to someone out of frame. Lock the perimeter, he ordered. Shut down every route from Safe's building to the riverfront. And find Crow. A voice answered, muffled, immediate. Valentina leaned closer to me. Haya, she whispered. Listen to me. You need to understand something right now. I swallowed, staring at the frozen image of Safe disappearing into the building like a candle snuffed out.
What?
I whispered. Valentina's voice was quiet, but each word felt like it was being hammered into place. They didn't just take him. They made sure you'd see it. My stomach dropped further, somehow. How? Valentina tapped the tablet. This feed. It wasn't random. Someone gave us access. Someone wanted him watched. The implications hit me like a wave of cold water. So, someone is feeding him information, I said, staring at the wolf. Inside your world. The wolf didn't deny it. He simply stared at the city beyond the glass like he was staring through it, past buildings, past rain, past the ordinary illusion of safety, straight into the machinery underneath. Yes, he said. Then he turned his head slightly, and for the first time his voice carried something sharper than control. Which means, he continued, tonight isn't just about who shot you. My throat tightened. Then what is it about? His eyes met mine. It's about who thinks they can walk up to my door, he said, leave blood on my steps, and dictate the price. He slipped the USB drive into his pocket, like it was nothing. Then he said the sentence that made my heart stop for a different reason than fear. We're going to trade. Valentina's hand tightened on my arm.
No.
The wolf's expression didn't change. Yes. I stared at him, horrified. You're going to give them what they want. He looked at me like I'd asked the wrong question. We're going to give them what they think they want, he said. And we're going to take Safe back. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because in that moment I understood, this wasn't a rescue. It was a trap. And if the trap failed, my brother would be the first person to pay. I didn't sleep after that. Even when Valentina tried to make me lie down again, even when the medication softened the sharpest spikes of pain, my mind kept running ahead of my body, mapping routes, imagining Safe's fear, replaying the way those men guided him like it was normal. Like nobody on that street would dare interrupt. Like the world had already agreed not to see. The wolf moved like time belonged to him. In the next hour, the penthouse turned into a command center without anyone ever raising their voice. Screens lit up on the kitchen island and along the wall by the glass windows. Men I hadn't seen before appeared, silent, efficient, carrying small cases that clicked open to reveal tools that didn't belong in any home. Marco returned once, wet from the rain, eyes hard. He didn't look at me for long, but when he did, his gaze held a warning I could feel under my skin. They sent the terms, he said, holding out a phone to the wolf. I pushed myself upright, ignoring Valentina's glare. What terms? The wolf took the phone, read the message, and didn't react. That lack of reaction was the reaction. It meant he'd expected it. They want the USB, he said. And you. My throat closed. Me? They think you're the only copy, Valentina said, her voice calm but edged. And they think you're scared enough to follow. I wanted to say, I wasn't scared. But the truth was, fear wasn't the problem. The problem was love. Fear makes you hide. Love makes you walk into a fire. My hands trembled as I looked at the wolf. If I go, they'll kill me. If you go alone, he corrected. Marco leaned over the island, pointing at a satellite map on one of the screens. They want the exchange at the riverfront. Old Container Yard. Pier 19. My stomach twisted. I knew that place. Everyone in logistics knew it, not because it was important, but because it was forgotten. A skeleton of cranes and rusted stacks, barely used except for shipments no one wanted to explain. And suddenly my numbers made sense in a way that made me cold. That's where the fake containers go, I whispered before I could stop myself. The room went still. The wolf's eyes cut to me. Explain. I swallowed, forcing my brain to work through the panic. My company handled freight manifests. But some container IDs were repeated, same ID, 2 different destinations. Like the real shipment went one way and the ghost shipment went another. I pointed weakly toward the screen. Pier 19 showed up more than once. Not often, but enough to be a pattern. Valentina's gaze sharpened. So it's not just a meeting point. It's a hub. Yes, I whispered. A laundering artery. Marco's jaw tightened. Crow's backyard. The name felt like poison. Detective Crow, police badge, clean suit, eyes that asked questions like knives. I had thought he was trying to help. Now I could see how perfectly he'd positioned himself. Close enough to smell the smoke, far enough to never burn. The wolf spoke without looking away from the map. They want a trade where they can disappear. Marco nodded. And where they can stage your brother. My chest tightened so hard, I thought I might vomit. Safe, he's there?
Not yet, Marco said.
But he will be. They'll bring him last. That's how they keep control.
Control.
The word landed like a weight. Valentina came to my side and lowered her voice. You stay here. I turned toward her.
No.
Her eyes flashed. Haya. I'm not staying here while you trade my brother on a dock like a piece of cargo, I said, and the words came out shaking but strong. I'll do what you want. I won't run. I won't call. I won't touch anything. But I'm not staying behind. Valentina's expression tightened, like she was fighting between reason and empathy. Then the wolf spoke, quiet and final. She comes. Valentina looked at him like he'd just lit a match inside her careful world. She can barely stand. She'll stand, he said. I didn't know if that was faith in me or indifference to my pain. Either way, it held me upright. They dressed me in something that didn't look like protection but felt like it. Dark clothes, soft fabric that didn't rub my wound. Valentina pressed a thin patch over the bandage, reinforcing it. Marco handed the wolf an identical USB drive in a small black case. A decoy. I whispered. The wolf didn't answer, but his eyes said, always. Before we left, he turned to me one last time inside the elevator's dim light. Whatever happens out there, he said, you don't speak unless I tell you to. You don't move unless I tell you to. My voice cracked. And safe.
His gaze held mine.
We bring him back. The elevator dropped, smooth and silent. My heart didn't. Outside, the rain had become a fine mist, turning the city into blurred light. 2 black vehicles waited, engines purring like restrained animals. I was placed in the back seat of the second car with Valentina. The wolf and Marco took the first. As we pulled away, I watched the city slide past and felt my life splitting into a before and after. Before, numbers, ledgers, small fears. After, men with guns, docks at midnight, and a brother I might never see again if I made one wrong sound. Valentina sat beside me, steady, watchful. She didn't hold my hand. She didn't offer comfort. But when the car hit a bump and pain flashed through my side, she shifted closer just enough to block me from being thrown against the door. It was the closest thing to kindness she allowed herself. Pier 19 rose out of the mist like a dead monument. Rusted cranes stood frozen over stacks of containers. Sodium lamps cast sickly pools of yellow light, and the river moved beyond like a dark mouth swallowing everything it touched. We didn't drive in all the way. We stopped at the edge of the yard, where shadows could hide us. Marco's voice crackled through a comm device. Positions. Men slipped out into the darkness, like they belonged to it. I could barely see them, which I realized was the point. Then a message came, one phone buzz, one short sentence read aloud. They're here, Marco said. My lungs clenched. The wolf stepped out of the first car and walked forward alone, the decoy case in his hand. No umbrella. No flinch. The rain mist clung to him like smoke. He looked like a man walking toward a deal he'd already decided the outcome of. Across the open space, headlights cut through the mist. Another vehicle rolled in, white van, plain, the kind that could be anything. It stopped near a stack of containers marked with faded shipping codes. A door slid open. 2 men stepped out first, scanning the dark. Then a third. And my heart stopped, because even from this distance, I recognized the way authority sat on him like a tailored coat. Detective Crow. No uniform tonight. Just a dark jacket, clean shoes, and that calm face that made lies sound official. Valentina's breath tightened beside me. He came himself. The wolf didn't move. He waited, perfectly still, until Crow lifted one hand slightly, an almost friendly gesture. Then Crow spoke. I couldn't hear the words clearly through the distance, but I didn't need to. His body language said it all. You brought what I asked for.
Good boy.
The wolf answered with nothing but his posture. Crow nodded once, and one of the men at his side turned and gestured toward the van. A shape appeared.
Safe.
My brother stumbled out, hands tied in front of him, mouth taped. His face was bruised, fresh, ugly color against his skin. His eyes were wide, searching, desperate. For 1 second, his gaze swept the yard like he was trying to find a door to run to. Then he saw me. I don't know how, maybe my movement, maybe the way my breath hitched loud enough to be heard, maybe just instinct. But his eyes locked onto mine through the shadow and mist, and something in him broke. He made a muffled sound behind the tape. I pressed my hand to the window, trembling so hard my fingers wouldn't obey. Valentina grabbed my wrist gently but firmly. Don't. Tears blurred my vision. I couldn't stop them now. Safe. Outside, Crow leaned closer to the wolf, speaking again. This time he lifted his own phone and showed a screen, like proof of control, like a reminder that he owned the narrative. The wolf opened the black case slightly, just enough for Crow to see a flash of metal and plastic. Crow smiled. And then, like a nightmare choosing its worst moment, a second figure stepped into the light from behind the containers.
Tall. Broad.
A scar on his chin. My blood turned to ice. The courier's description snapped into place. The man raised his hand slowly, palm out, like he was greeting an old friend. And even from here, I saw it, the tattoo on his wrist when his sleeve shifted. A rook. Valentina's voice went very quiet. That's not Crow's muscle. My throat barely worked. Then who is he? The wolf's head turned a fraction, just enough to acknowledge the newcomer. And in that tiny movement, I understood. The wolf hadn't just walked into a trade. He'd walked into the center of something bigger. Crow was here. Rook was here. Safe was between them. And I was the reason the whole machine had started moving. The wolf lifted the case higher. Crow reached out. And at the exact moment their hands were about to close the distance, my comm device crackled in Valentina's ear with Marco's voice, suddenly sharp. Boss, behind you. Everything happened at once. A shadow moved near the cranes. A suppressed shot popped like a dull cough. Crow jerked back. The wolf pivoted. And the dock exploded into chaos. Chaos doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives like a decision. One dull, suppressed pop and the whole riverfront changed. Crow's men tensed. The wolf's silhouette shifted. Safe flinched hard enough that the tape over his mouth wrinkled, and every shadow suddenly looked like it could kill. Crow didn't scream. He didn't even stumble much. He just jerked back as if insulted, one hand flying to his side. His jacket darkened fast under the yellow dock lights. Blood, blooming like a secret. For half a second, nobody moved because nobody wanted to be the first to move wrong. Then the world snapped. Crow's men dragged him toward the van. Someone shouted orders I couldn't make out, voices swallowed by distance, and the hum of engines. The white van's sliding door slammed open and shut again like it couldn't decide whether to run or fight. The wolf didn't run for cover like a normal man would. He moved like he had already imagined every angle of this moment. He pivoted toward the cranes, toward the place Marco had warned him about, and I saw what Crow had never bothered to notice. The wolf wasn't walking into a trap. He was walking into a trap he'd been waiting for. Valentina's grip tightened on my wrist as I leaned forward, trying to see through the mist and bodies. Stay down, she warned. I can't, I whispered, throat burning. Safe. Safe was still there, still between them. Hands tied, mouth taped, eyes wide. Two men held him like he was a bargaining chip made of flesh, shifting him closer to the containers, using him as a shield. And then the tall man with the scar stepped forward.
Rook.
Even from this distance, he had a presence that made everything else look smaller. He didn't flinch at gunfire. He didn't react to Crow bleeding. He looked at Crow the way you look at a tool that's begun to rust, annoyed, not afraid. I understood something with a sick clarity. Crow had never been the top of this. Crow had been the badge that made the pipeline safe.
Rook was the pipeline.
Rook lifted one hand and, like he was conducting an orchestra, Crow's men hesitated. Confusion rippled through them. Their loyalty was suddenly split between a man with a badge and a man who didn't need one. The wolf moved again. The dock lights flashed as one of the overhead lamps shattered. Darkness swallowed a slice of the yard. In that darkness, shadows shifted. Wolf's men, unseen until now, flowing around container stacks like water. A second suppressed pop sounded, closer. A man by the van dropped without drama. The yard turned into a chessboard, and I realized how stupid it had been to think I was watching a trade. This wasn't a trade. This was an execution of a plan. My heart hammered so hard my bandage felt like it might split. Valentina pressed a finger to her earpiece, eyes narrowed, listening. Then she leaned closer to the window and spoke softly, controlled. Marco says move point is now, she murmured. They're pulling safe toward the container line. Boss will intercept. My breath caught. He'll die if they... Valentina's eyes cut to mine. He won't. It wasn't reassurance. It was confidence. Outside, Rook reached under his jacket and pulled out a pistol like it was part of his hand. He pointed it at Crow, bleeding, furious, trying to stay upright, and said something I couldn't hear. Crow's face twisted. He shouted back, voice rising, panic disguised as anger. Rook didn't care. He swung the gun towards safe instead. My blood froze. The world narrowed to that barrel and my brother's eyes. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything except feel the horrifying certainty of what was about to happen. And then the wolf appeared, fast, sudden, like a shadow gaining teeth. He didn't charge straight. He cut the angle. He moved behind a container stack, then reappeared closer, using darkness like armor. In one smooth motion he fired, not wildly, not desperately. Precise. Controlled. Rook's gun hand-jerked. The shot Rook fired went wide, punching into a container with a metallic scream. Safe flinched, a muffled cry trapped behind tape. The men holding him panicked, dragging him back, trying to reposition. The wolf moved again, closing the distance like gravity. I saw Marco's silhouette emerge near the van, intercepting Crow's retreat route. Another of the wolf's men hit the van's tires, 2 shots, low, turning escape into a limp. Crow's men started firing back, louder now, unsuppressed. Real gunfire cracked across the dock, harsh and bright. Sparks leapt off metal. The fog filled with the smell of burned powder. Valentina pushed my head down instinctively, shielding me even through glass and steel. I shook her off and looked up anyway because if my brother was going to die, I refused to be looking away. Safe was forced to his knees. One of Rook's men jammed a gun to his head, trembling slightly, nervous, not skilled, the kind of person who killed because he was ordered to. Rook stepped closer, his wounded wrist lowered, but not useless. Blood ran down his hand, and still he looked calm. He stared at the wolf like this was personal, like the Rook tattoo wasn't just a symbol but a signature. The wolf stopped a few paces away, shoulders squared. He said something low, cold, and Rook's mouth curved into a smile that wasn't happy. Then Rook lifted his free hand and snapped his fingers once. Crow, still clutching his side, lunged toward the van door, trying to disappear into it, trying to vanish behind his own men. Marco caught him. Not gently. Crow slammed into the van's side with a dull thud, collapsing to his knees. Marco yanked him upright by the collar, like he was lifting a sack. Crow's face contorted, trying to speak, trying to bargain. Rook didn't even look at him. That's when I understood. Crow was already finished in Rook's mind. Crow was liability. I suddenly remembered the courier's terror. The way he had said he was forced. The way fear makes people deliver messages. The way systems use weak links and then cut them loose. Rook shifted his gaze toward me, toward the car. My stomach dropped. Even through rain and distance, I felt it. He knew I was there. He'd expected it. He wanted it. He raised his gun again, aiming past the wolf, toward the vehicle. Valentina cursed under her breath and threw herself across my body, blocking the window. The shot hit the car's frame with a brutal clang. Glass spiderwebbed. I screamed, not because of the sound, but because it was proof. I wasn't just bait. I was still the message. The wolf's head snapped toward the car, and for the first time, something in his expression cracked. Not panic. Fury. He turned back to Rook, and whatever he said next made even Rook pause. It was just a pause, half a breath, but it was enough. Marco moved fast, dragging Crow fully into view, like a shield and a confession at the same time. The wolf stepped to the side, changing the angle again, forcing Rook to choose between shooting and losing control of his line of sight. Rook's man with the gun to Safe's had hesitated. The wolf fired once. The gunman dropped. Safe fell sideways, still tied, still taped, but alive, and that was all my body could process. I sobbed without meaning to. Rook snarled something, stepping back into the fog, retreating toward the container maze where shadows belonged to him more than anyone else. He was wounded. He was outnumbered. But he wasn't running like a defeated man. He was withdrawing like a man who had learned something and planned to return. The wolf didn't chase. He went straight to Safe. He cut Safe's bindings with a blade I hadn't seen. Marco ripped the tape off Safe's mouth, and my brother gasped like he'd been underwater. Safe's eyes darted wildly until they found mine again through the cracked glass. His face crumpled. Haya, he managed, voice ragged. Valentina unlocked the car door and helped me out before my legs could decide to fail. Pain flared, but adrenaline held me upright. I stumbled toward him. Marco stepped in front of me automatically, scanning the shadows for movement, but the wolf lifted one hand, permission, command, both at once, and Marco let me pass. I fell to my knees beside Safe, careful of my wound, hands shaking as I touched his bruised face like I needed proof he was real. I'm here, I choked. I'm here, I'm sorry, I'm so... Safe grabbed my wrist, tight, desperate. They said you were dead. I shook my head, tears spilling freely now. Not tonight. Behind us, Crow tried to speak again. You can't, I'm police. Marco shoved him down. Crow's knees hit wet concrete. The wolf walked over slowly, rain beating on his sleeves, eyes colder than the river. Crow looked up at him, and I saw real fear for the first time. Not the fear of being caught. The fear of being discarded. You set her up, the wolf said, voice low. You let them shoot her. You brought them to my door. Crow stammered, blood on his teeth. I was protecting, I was keeping order. Order, the wolf repeated, like the word was filthy. He didn't raise his gun. He didn't need to. He looked at Marco once. Marco understood. Crow was dragged toward the edge of the yard, toward the dark space between containers where dock lights didn't reach, and nothing had to look official. I didn't watch the end. I didn't need to. The title of my night was already written in blood on marble steps. Someone paid that night. Not with money. With consequence. The wolf returned to us, gaze briefly scanning Safe for injuries, then flicking to my bandage, as if measuring how close I'd been to dying under his roof. You're leaving the city, he said to me. It wasn't a suggestion. Valentina came beside him, her calm face finally showing a crack of relief. We'll move you before dawn. New papers. New place. And the ledger will go public, through channels Crow can't bury. I stared up at the wolf. My voice was small. Rook got away. The wolf's expression didn't change. He'll come back. My stomach sank. But tonight, he added, looking at Safe, then back at me, he learned something. What? I whispered. That you're not alone anymore. The rain kept falling. The city kept breathing. And as I held my brother and felt the ache in my side and the weight of everything I'd dragged into motion, I understood the final truth of the door I'd knocked on. I hadn't found safety. I had found power. And power, once it decides you matter, doesn't let you go back to being invisible.